Hello, my name is Ali Shahzad, and in this video I'll show you SciChart 3.1. Now this application is a WPF and Silverlight charting component for the medical and financial industries, and I'll discuss about the software and I'll show you its features. Now we have create a basic chart, create a multi-series chart, create real-time charts. Now we should look at the basic chart. We have band series chart, and this is like a band series chart. Now we can zoom back out and we can zoom in onto the chart. We have a box plot, and this is a demonstration of a box plot, which is highly useful. Bubble chart. This contains bubbles about all of an inch total, and we can increase the bubble size with the slider and uses the scale to change the slider of the bubbles. I'll rotate back to default. Candlestick chart, which is this is useful for natural use. We can zoom in the chart, we can pan the chart, we can zoom back out. Column chart. This is a column chart, which is basically a bar. If I click on x-axis, I need to look at different charts, but we should discuss about if I click on x-axis swaps, it automatically swaps the axis. If I check mark is x-axis flipped, it automatically flips the axis and it flips the entire view of the chart example series. Its y-axis flipped. If I check like that, it automatically puts the entire view into a different position. Other charts in different positions interviewed it, and others are upside down. And we have a line chart, which is basically you look like an oscilloscope, but this contains a line chart, and this is how an oscilloscope looks, how the view looks like this. We can zoom into the chart, we can double click to zoom back out, we can pan the chart, and if I click on x-axis swapped, it automatically swaps the waveform, and if I check mark is x-axis flip, it flips the waveform and even the entire view, and then the background remains original, but the waveform appears as different. It flipped. If I check mark is y-axis flipped, it flips the view and the waveform itself. And we have a scatter chart. Now this is a scatter chart. Now this demonstrates an example of a scatter chart. Now this, we can zoom into the chart to take a closer look about how a scatter chart looks. We can then pan the chart, and if I click and rotate clockwise, it automatically changes the waveform to just type of view. If I do this with the line chart, it automatically changes the view to this position. Mountain chart. Now the mountain chart is like data of how the data is composed. This contains dates and all of the data from the different positions of which is happening in the data. Now this looks like a graphic trend line. We have candlestick and lines. This is containing candlestick lines. We have gaps in series. Now this contains gap in series. We have different fittings, positions, different waveform line, etc. Line and scatter chart. This also looks new. A line is visible with small dotted pieces of scatter. Stacked bar chart. This is how a bar chart looks. We have a sample, no, which stands for number, and the value of this is 0 to 50, and the source code we can look at that created these examples. And this is written in XAML. This example is made in the XAML format and is coded, fully coded. And this stacked column chart, which is another varieties and variable of a bar. This series is another example chart. This is another equivalent, and this is also another. We can then zoom into the chart. We can zoom back out. We can view the fan chart. We can zoom in. We can double click to zoom back out. And we have stacked mountain chart. This is how it looks. We cannot zoom in. We cannot even pan the chart, and it's non-editable. It's a static image, 16 channel EEG, and this is how the display function in EEG. And if I pause this, we can then change the interval, or change this level, and for the points per tick, I'll change to this level. What happens if I click stop? It automatically changes the view, and it scrolls entirely identical. If I reset this back, what happens to the view? It automatically changes back to the original position. This is a lot more different than what I showed you now. The line like this compared to this fast. What happens if I reset it? It resets, and we can start a new one. FIFO scoring chart, and the FIFO scoring chart is like a FIFO cross, and the cross and the FIFO measurement. If I pause this, if I reset this, if I uncheck use FIFO, if I click on start, it appears the FIFO waveform again, even if the FIFO is disabled. If I check use FIFO, check mark, click start, then it automatically starts the session. And the performance demo, but bear in mind I'm screen recording my video, but this should be not fast. If I pause this again, I'm discussing it again, we can then zoom into the chart and double click. We will do that, then we'll zoom back out. And real time with cursors. and this contains a cursor for the example chart. Now this is currently runtime based, and we have real-time ticking stock charts. Now this is how financial use can observe a ticking stock chart based example series of how they analyze it. Now you can use this scroll bar to change the view, or you can use the pan and zoom function. You can also change the tick view. If I go check it to 4, what happens? Now we'll click on start every time. You can see the chart is ticking away there. Once it's ticking, you can actually zoom it and pan it. All of it's no problem. And then we can now change the series type. In addition, we can also change the theme. If I change now this view changes. And logarithmic y-axis. This is a view of the logarithmic y-axis. Now we can zoom in onto the chart. We can zoom or pan. We can pan the chart and use x-axis. If I click on this, it changes to the x only axis direction. If I click on both x-y axis, it automatically changes back to the original image. If I click on this y-axis, it changes to this view. If I click on none, no change will be occurred. I'll change it back to the both x-y axis. And we have vertical charts, and we have black and red lines, blue line. And this demonstrates a axis on the left and the right, and a y axis on the top. SciChart supports unlimited x and y axis viewing. Now this means that you can view the chart while looking at these lines. It also features numbers for you to calculate and measure the chart. We can drag over to zoom. If I click on zoom x-axis only, it only zooms to the specific point, like zooming axis only. If I check mark zoom extents y-axis, it allows you to zoom in whatever you like. You can use animation, or you don't want to. You can also reset the zoom look. Instead of double clicking back to zoom, but this should be integrated, you can reset the zoom by clicking on this button, and it automatically resets the zoom. Mouse wheel zoom and scroll, and we have a pan modifier which we'll use, and zoom modifier. We can also zoom in onto the chart. We can use a pan modifier, then we can we can adjust our mouse to scroll wheel to change to use the pan modifier, or we can use the zoom modifier to bring it back, and we can then double click to zoom back out. And now this is the overview to go. Now the overview control allows you to scroll, and pan and zoom, they also have been rewritten back when they did in SciChart 1.5, and we can pan and mouse drag, and this is a step line waveform. We can pan the chart. Now this is only panable. We can pan middle button drag using my scroll wheel, and if I click on right button drag, I'm using my right button wheel button on my mouse, or bring it back to the left button drag. And we have also C features apps. We also have an ECG monitor available, and this is the visual data and the real-time viewing of a heart rate monitor. Now this example uses MVVM and uses how fill a FIFO with data, and etc, blah blah. And this is also have a heart beating. This is a visual style heart icon, and this is the number of the example BPM and the number rate of the heart rate and the time in seconds, 31, 32, etc. Oscilloscope, and we have, we can pan the chart, we can zoom in furthermore, and we can zoom back out. You can also use step line. If we click on zoom extends, if I use the cursor, it automatically displays a cursor for whichever I'm pointing at. And if I use the roll level modifier, it automatically places a cursor onto the waveform, the dotted ball. Fourier series, if we click on Lisa Joes, it automatically changes the oscilloscope waveform to Lisa Joes function, the data source. If we click on back to the Fourier series, it automatically changes back to the traditional viewing of the oscilloscope. We have SciChart Trader. Now this is how a real-time ticking stock chart will look like. There's also a line added in, meaning you can see the line. And we can then adjust this bar. Then we can expand this furthermore to look at the dates, specific dates, and etc of the year. And we can also zoom in, and like that we can change the waveform, the graph style, fast column. I'll choose this one, I'll test this, I'll choose fast column, and I'll change the rest of the theme of the graph. Like that. And we can change the currency to the EUR USD, and this year spanned from 1999 to 2012, and this is the value. Now this value is the number. Now we can decrease with the size. We can decrease or increase the size of the series, and even with like that. And we can also use a spectrum analyzer, and this is a spectrum analyzer, how it does look. If we click on time domain, it makes the waveform looks like this, and this is a spectrum analyzer. If we click on freak domain, it just is back to its original position. Freak domain, the default one. Annotations are easy. You can also create an annotation. You'll hover over a box, you click on this, you can click on the box. We have boxes, horizontal line, vertical line, and custom arrows, etc, etc. We have a tooltip. We can also feature a tooltip, and this tooltip features a message to the tooltip. This one here. We can also add a text. We can also create text. We can, and these are custom markers. We can expand, or I can change the view. Now we can create annotations dynamically. Now this is all of the newer ones. Now we can add text. Horizontal line, vertical line, axis markers. These are kind of useful for management in a series. Custom annotation, I think that is a child, is case of an image. And finally, a box annotation. We can drag horizontal thresholds. Now this looks like a bar. Now the bar clipping feature of this is showcased and featured use on the chart. Now we can change the bar coloring. Now we can change this viewing to a lot more like expanded view. Now this is changing its color. Now this bar coloring is changing it to red, and this is a kind of colorification threshold, and the threshold number is changing. Now we can increase or decrease the thresholds. The more we decrease, the more color it could reach. If I increase the threshold back again, it automatically decreases the color, and all of the waveform are left non-shaded, but a fewer ones are left shaded. Interaction with annotations. We can also resize the box. We can change lines, resize lines, make smaller, then we can do trend lines. We can then put a little box there, and we can also move around the text box. Everything like that. And we have a render series type. Now this is the actual view of the render series type. Now if I zoom in, now if I use the fast line runnable series, then if I use the fast column runnable series, it automatically changes the waveform. If I switch between these, look, it automatically changes the waveform. And add data point markers. And that's it for this video. Now this video is more straightforward, and we can look into the software, more into the software. Now thank you for watching this video, and if the video helped you, feel free to post the comments into the comment section below, and thank you for having the time.